Hey, it's Fanuel here, your host of Questions of the Day, where I take you on my journey around the world to uncover the practice of civic science in order to understand who does what, where, when, how, and everything in between. In this conversation, I talk with Brendon Davis, a PhD candidate in the Cellular, Molecular, and Developmental Biology and Biophysics program, that was a mouthful, at Johns Hopkins University. He is also the president of the Science Policy and Diplomacy Group at Johns Hopkins. As you may know, science policy is a very active, shall we say, galaxy within what I continue to call the civic science universe. Anyway, in our conversation at the Imagine Center at GHU, Brendon tells me this.
We have that in the most recent issue of JSPG. But in the next issue, we have a group of fantastic people who wrote a piece about increasing research support for women-specific diseases, and increasing like foundational research support for these kind of areas that have been historically understudied. And so that's going to be on the next issue. And in the following issue, I'm a co-author on a paper about supporting farmers in transitioning to alternative plant-based protein products. And so for the first time, we have 3 consecutive JSPG issues that will have at least one article from our group in it.
All right, so we get into that and way more, so don't go away.
Previously on Questions of the Day.
We have, in my mind, all of the pieces are very much there because, like you said, we have plenty of STEM graduate students who want to go on to policy careers. There are very few options for them. A lot of them would like to stay in Massachusetts, and so we know we have demand there. We've been working with the legislature for 4 or 5 years. We know that they really benefit from our students. And then also, like, Massachusetts just has the resources that you need for this. So, for example, we have the highest number.
Can you just tell us more about what this group is about? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a predominantly graduate student run group focused on talking about science policy and science diplomacy issues and bringing that to the larger graduate student postdoc body here at Hopkins. And so as the name suggests, the group has 2 kind of main components: the science policy component, which is generally focused on domestic science issues that can be solved with policy solutions. And the science diplomacy side is international science issues. So oftentimes collaborations between groups. And so obviously there's a number of times where the 2 sides crosstalk because domestic and international issues often align, particularly talking about science that usually extends well beyond borders.
Right.
But in general, both sides of the group just have this focus of either talking about domestic, state level, local level, and ultimately federal policy matters, and the diplomacy side that focuses on how the U.S. interacts with other countries on the science front.
Now, for someone who is listening to this and doesn't really know about what these groups tend to be about, you tend to hear a lot about science policy groups all over the place. But you have this diplomacy tag added on top of it. There's a lot of overlap. Talking offline a little bit. You just give us kind of a landscape view a little bit about science policy and diplomacy, and you told me offline that diplomacy there's less of that, right?
Yeah, in general, when you look for these groups at the university level, there'll be the science policy group or the science policy collective, a science policy initiative. You rarely see the diplomacy tag. And of course, some of those groups fold in diplomacy, international issues into their science policy group. But we put this specific focus on diplomacy for the purpose of thinking about things beyond U.S. borders, of having a dedicated team that is looking outside of the U.S. Just because, as I mentioned, science is naturally collaborative. It naturally extends beyond borders. And so when we're talking about policy and what the decisions that governments are making, the U.S. is making decisions about science that aren't just going to be focused on the U.S., that also depend on, how other countries are expanding their science sectors. And so when we're, just in terms of like these university groups, oftentimes they'll focus on science policy issues, and that's great because they are, leveraging the fact, we're in the U.S., typically made up of constituent voters, oftentimes, and so groups have this power to, talk to their representatives and focus on science policy and actually further initiatives as science experts themselves.
Right.
The diplomacy side is simply extending that to not just talking to your representatives, but also to international collaborators.
Right.
And so we've done projects in the past with like Belgium. We're currently putting together a seminar series with groups in Spain and Japan, trying to get these international conversations going in ways that extend beyond just talking to our own representatives.
Of course, you're so close to DC
Yes.
that you have that advantage, right? Maybe that helps you with the diplomacy side as well. Right?
Exactly. That's definitely, I mean, the advantage of the group overall is the fact that we can go to the Hill whenever we want. But beyond that, the diplomacy side also does a series, the Meetups at the Embassy series. And so every once a month or so, we'll talk to an embassy and have them host a number of graduate students, depending on how big of a space they have. So we've had big, like 60-person groups before. Sometimes it's smaller, 15 to 20 students. But getting graduate students to go to embassies in DC and hear about the scientific projects and collaborations that embassy is doing with the U.S. So recently we went to Rwanda, Portugal, Brazil, Japan, all these countries, and sometimes there's conversations about what
the embassies.
Oh, sorry. Yes, not the embassies. Yes. No international travel at this point. Yes, we're going to the embassies of those countries and hearing often from their scientific advisors about their projects, and that's something that we just have the nice advantage of being able to do, being just an hour drive from DC.
Yeah, I mean that's great. So on your website, it says part of your, I'm not sure if it's your mission or there's a nice quote there, and I want to read you. So we are shaping future leaders in science policy, bridging the gap between research and legislation for a more informed, sustainable world. Tell us a little bit about who the members are. You mentioned graduate students several times. Can you tell us more about them? I believe postdocs are also part of this mix.
Yes. So we currently our leadership board is graduate students, but we include graduate students and postdocs in every event where we're able. And the predominant members are typically people in the hard sciences or soft, depending on whether you count biology as a soft science or not. I like to think of it as hard science, but in the general scientific sphere. So we have astronomers, we have biologists, we have chemists, applied physicists.
Who is overrepresented or well represented?
Well represented, probably biological and biochemical sciences. Yeah, we have one person training as a physician right now. A couple others from biomedical programs here. I'm myself in a cellular biology program. So the biological sciences are probably the most represented in our current leadership board, but we have a mix of everyone. We also have members who are part of the Johns Hopkins International Studies School that is based down in DC, actually. So they're oftentimes more focused on the science diplomacy side. A number of them have scientific backgrounds from undergrad or past experiences, but they're currently studying actual international studies. So we have the broad range of disciplines that you'd expect to all have some type of tangential relationship to science policy or diplomacy.
And when they join, like, what are they? Have they told you, like, this is why I'm joining? Because this is when I get to that heart. And is it different to, let's say, someone who's early in their career? Because I'm assuming it's mostly graduate students, right? What are they telling you about why they're joining?
Yeah, it could be for any number of reasons. We have a good number of people who want to go into a science policy career or a science diplomacy career. They want to maybe leave the bench behind and go on to focus on being a science advisor, helping out governments, or our previous president just graduated and went on to become the director of the science policy initiatives for the UK embassy. So going on to a government tangential.
That was a win for you guys.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're graduating people into these like director roles, so that's great. But so by the token, some people are interested in this career path. And part of the goals of the group are to get more people interested into a science policy career path, because you often don't, in academia, you don't get kind of sold on those other alternative paths. It's oftentimes thought of just academia or industry. And so that's a lot of the group. Other times, the large other chunk of people who join the group are people who care about issues that are going on in government. And oftentimes they look at, science funding, at reproductive rights, at any of these numbers of kind of like dynamically changing things, and saying like, oh, we could do better. We could offer expertise as scientists, as people who are currently studying, these very niche topics, and interact with governments in a meaningful way, especially being here in DC, where we can go to the Hill and actually talk to, congressional offices about those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of, we oftentimes when people join, we give them the warning, like, it's not necessarily a resume item that you're coming here for. You're going to do way more work than the resume item is worth. What you're coming here for is like the passion to be able to do these things and do them meaningfully. Right. And everyone buys into that and comes for the purpose of actually kind of addressing these kind of big science-related topics at a policy level.
And hoping to learn skills, right?
Exactly.
And so that's actually my next question in terms of what does the group offer? Because online there, I think there are courses, you have webinars, right? These trips you were talking about. Maybe don't give us the whole breakdown of everything, but sure. What is the bread and butter, the core thing that you all do, training wise or offering to your members that kind of defines?
Sure. Yeah, I think the core, like one of the core principles that we'll constantly kind of strive for is giving entry-level opportunities to graduate students and postdocs who might not know where to go, how to interact with a science policy world, a science diplomacy world. That's like why the embassies are a good way to just see what our international science collaborations look like. When I talk about the Congressional Hill visits, we bring graduate students and postdocs down to the Hill. We do a training day of how do you talk to your representatives, how do you kind of sell as a science expert, sell that you think this policy is a good idea. And so it's trying to find those opportunities that essentially make the barrier of entry lower for students who might not know how to go about doing this. And then they can go do it themselves afterwards.
I see. And do you track that, like the impact or evaluation, or would you like to do so if you're not?
Yeah, we should definitely keep finer details. I will say one of the kind of the cool things now that I've been with the group for a couple of years is you see like someone who got involved in one event 2-3 years ago, and now they're a member of the leadership board. Now they're applying to be the vice president, the president of the group. I'm thinking of a few different people in my head who are co-authors on one of the publications that we have published with the Journal of Science Policy and Governance. And when we published that paper, when they volunteered to write it, they were just kind of general student members who were interested in this one topic and said, hey, I would love to help write. And now they're members of the leadership board, planning events and writing things with other students. And that's just great to see that kind of progression.
And these anecdotes, great ones.
Yeah.
Are you tracking them formally?
Not formally.
Not formally. Would you like to?
I would.
What's stopping you?
Probably just keeping. We have so much a variety of students who are involved, or particularly who are interested in like one specific set of events. Like they're interested in the writing training that we do, or they're interested in the embassy training we do. They're not necessarily going to every single possible event. Of course, people have their passions about different science policy and diplomacy things. We absolutely should. Like and maybe we could keep a better track of everyone who's been to every, or keep a running list of people who come to this event, this kind of event, and then we can follow up with them.
No, of course, I'll admit, it's an unfair question.
Sure.
Because part of it, you are a graduate student. The focus is on your graduate study.
I guess the other limiting factor for everything we're trying to do is time. People having the time to devote to this outside of their study.
Yeah, and that's so my next question is, how do you do it? So you're fourth year now. I remember from my own grad school days, year 3, year 4, you're hopefully seeing the light end of the tunnel. Hope it's not the train. How do you do it? How do you devote time? And
I got some advice from an older graduate student during my second year that was, don't let your PhD be the main thing you do, which is probably bad advice. Like when you're trying to do a PhD and get it done in a reasonable amount of time, and that takes so much dedicated time. It probably should be the main thing you do, but I like the idea that like your PhD is like, you are, that's obviously what you're here in graduate school to do. In all of this also, I think, applies to master's students at a shorter time scale. It's what you're here to do. And once you get the ball rolling, once you're in your second or third year, you hopefully at least have kind of the idea of the things you need to check off day to day, the things you need to like get done, to make progress, put things together. You have an idea of your project. And it was at that point for me that I said, okay, I am progressing my science well. Is it worth it to devote time to something else that would bring the well-roundedness of it together? So, so to your question of like, how do I do it? Well, when I'm in lab and I'm, doing, an experiment or something, I'm getting that experiment done. That I can now do without really necessarily thinking about it. What I am thinking about is, okay, how do we go about logistically planning that next event for science policy? I sit down and I put everything into my lab notebook, and then I open Slack and I send the messages to the science policy and diplomacy group. And so it's a lot of, I'm constantly thinking about the science policy and diplomacy group while I'm doing all of the experiments that at this point I have become really good at scheduling for myself. So once I feel like I've mastered to some degree the bench side of it, I want to devote my time to actually growing those skills. And I think it's just kind of that passion project idea of it, where it's like, I don't mind when I go home after a long day in lab and I need to write up something or make a presentation for the science policy and diplomacy group. That's kind of the beneficial kind of growing stage for at least me at this point.
Yeah, and hence you're doing this right now. We're chatting, right?
Exactly.
I'm so thankful that you said yes.
Yeah,
this happened all so quickly.
Yeah.
The back end of this.
Well, I mean, you kind of learn the efficiency of it too, because right before I came over and chatted, I started a PCR. So that's going right now in lab. That'll be done as soon as we're done with this. So you learn how to kind of puzzle piece all of the sort of things together.
Yeah, and so you were busy because you're not only just running this group, but you also participating. You co-published for a policy memo, I believe, right, to JSPG as well, looking at international students, and made some really great arguments in there. I think very poignant given what's happening right now.
And if I may plug real quick, so we have that in the most recent issue of JSPG. But in the next issue, we have a group of fantastic people who wrote a piece about increasing research support for women-specific diseases, and increasing foundational research support for these kind of areas that have been historically understudied. And so that's going to be on the next issue. And in the following issue, I'm a co-author on a paper about supporting farmers in transitioning to alternative plant-based protein products. And so for the first time, we have 3 consecutive JSPG issues that will have at least one article from our group in it. So we're definitely doing a lot of science communication.
And in fact, that's again back to the idea of tracking the impact, right? You should put that on your website.
Absolutely.
We are a feeder of sorts to the JSPG.
Exactly.
And so, are you collaborating with JSPG in terms of, because these policy memos aren't, they're non-trivial to write, and so I'm assuming you host workshops and so forth to tell us about that.
Yeah, so we do an annual writing memo workshop here on the Hopkins campus for students, and that's in the past garnered a lot of interest. We haven't done something directly with JSPG yet, but we definitely that would definitely be a great direction for us to go.
So you're taking initiative to just submit them, right? You're telling your members, okay,
we're essentially all of these issues are passion projects of people in the group, and we say, okay, here's a great outlet for you. And once we were able to publish a couple papers, we had kind of the internal roadmap to how do you put this together, how do you get our students, exactly. We kind of have an internal editing system just so that we can help kind of develop these arguments in a more robust way. And so that's certainly helpful, having the internal experience. But we also attend, the JSPG does usually before every issue some type of writing workshop virtually as well. And so, we're not just thinking that we have all the expertise either. It's definitely kind of a constant learning process.
Because you probably invite guests as well, to give talks once in a while, right? And your members.
Yeah, so we're constantly reaching out to people, and like I said, we haven't done anything directly with JSPG yet, but we absolutely should.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, if they're watching later.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, reach out
to Brendon right here.
jhsciplegroup@gmail.com.
We'll put that in there.
Yeah.
How many members do you have? Is there
so we have we have 14 leadership board members. Those are the ones who actually plan the events. We have an email list of people who've in the past said they're interested of 800 people. So those are the people we're constantly reaching. And usually for big events, we will email the entire graduate student body here just to get things out there. And we also post on the Hopkins has a centralized like group events page, so that can reach other grad students, postdocs, and the like. But the first thing we do is we send an email out to those 800 who have said, they are interested in doing events, and those are also the ones we solicit applications from to join the leadership board, the ones who have kind of a sustained interest. And so to your question earlier about tracking the progress, it's those 800 that we would want to keep track of and say like, oh, how involved have you been in science policy and diplomacy?
Return rate is right
Exactly.
for your events. But as you mentioned, right, it's hard. Someone needs to be there tracking this, right, and so forth. So what is that a challenge of funding? Time we understand. Because you all volunteer, the 14 members, they're all volunteer board.
Absolutely.
What are some other challenges?
Yeah, funding is definitely the primary one. So we are lucky that because we have members from all the different colleges at Hopkins, we're able to apply to different graduate students bodies that provide event funding for groups
internally.
Yeah, it's all internally. And then we have applied to externally to various especially professional societies, does grants or micro grants. Research America has one, ASBMB has one. And so those are great. They are, I would say, like they're few and far between. And definitely the majority of our funding comes from eternal Hopkins funding that's earmarked for student groups. What would help our group, and I think groups around the country the most, is just more and more dedicated funding for science policy initiatives at the university level. It's just there are opportunities out there, but they are few and far between. Usually the application cycle is once a year, and so it just becomes hard to get funding for specific events, but also for those universities that don't have a science policy group. Some societies will provide like startup funds, but there's definitely a lack of that too. And providing kind of a startup grant to help someone who wants a science policy group at their university to be able to make that group, do some big events to kind of kick it off, would definitely be valuable. Obviously not for us, but we'd love to see when other new science policy groups pop up. So
one organization that comes to mind is NSBN.
Yes.
Same, kind of a central organizing entity, because while you were speaking, I was thinking, okay, imagine a kind of an exchange program between groups for universities. I'm guessing maybe that's taking place. If it's not, that'd be a cool thing to see. Science communication, science policy, right? That's what you're leading to. Right?
Yes, exactly. A centralized place, and particularly for graduate students. I don't know all of the details of this yet, but graduate students in particular have since the recent Stand Up for Science rallies that happened last month. There has been a big push to kind of connect graduate student science policy groups. And so actually I've discovered a lot of ones that I didn't know existed recently. And there's a lot more communication happening on that front. And it's still kind of ambiguous exactly what direction that's going to go and how we're going to plan events or collaborate. But there is at least now, especially in kind of the tumultuous science time we're living in, where at least on the domestic front, federal support for science is dwindling. There's a lot more of a push for communication between universities. And so similar to NSPN, that is a centralized place. There's definitely a push among graduate students across the country to kind of centralize our communication so that we can share resources and share ideas. As an example of that, I've been talking with the science policy group at Harvard to give them some of our guides for doing the Congressional Hill Day visits, because they're trying to come down in May and bring a few students to go and do their own Hill Day visits. So just sharing resources like that can be a valuable way to kind of keep science policy initiatives alive and help groups that might not have all the funding or experience.
Imagine also a website you can put like instruction manuals,
exactly
for things like but someone needs to do it, and that takes time.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
The list goes on and on. And I was thinking, we were chatting offline about the diplomacy visits that you are doing. You mentioned at the beginning, right? That those they're hard to put together, right? And there are a lot of moving pieces on that. We are at the Imagine Center right now. Okay, and I wish I could just keep on talking. let's imagine a little bit. Okay.
Sure, let's do it.
All right, let's do that. So, what do you hope? Right? Give us a vision of sorts and ground it in your group specifically. What is the vision here 5 years from now, 10 years? You're graduated, hopefully. Yes, you graduated.
Yes, hopefully so.
Give us one vision, and we'll keep going down other visions as well.
Sounds good. Let me do it on two levels. At the university level, within Hopkins internally, what I would love to see this group do, and this has been kind of my plan from my first year as president, which I'm starting right now, is to create a better kind of internal communication system for all students. To not just have kind of a leadership board that's organizing things for students to do things that they're interested in, but also to provide kind of an online forum of sorts to bring students who say like, oh, hey, they noticed their own initiative or issue that they want to address, and they have kind of a group, a community they can go to talk about that, see if other people are interested. There's no reason that leadership board members need to be involved in, writing a publication for JSPG, for example. It just tends to be how it goes because we're the ones who are often driving initiatives since we're the centralized place. So what we're working towards is growing our own internal Slack and our email list and our Hopkins designated group page to bring in students and essentially give them more of an active role. And so 5 years from now, I would love to see it where the leadership board is actually less of a kind of overarching entity. Like maybe they're helping and providing resources, but students are empowered. Students and postdocs are all empowered to kind of do it all themselves.
The members,
yes,
right?
The general body members.
Yeah, because right now you're saying you guys are doing most of the work. Make sure I understand.
Essentially, I'm saying right now the leadership board is driving initiatives.
Big chunks, okay.
And to kind of provide to essentially decentralize that a little
to
all the general body members who as of right now are kind of responding to events that are happening, and instead kind of empowering them to drive their own initiatives. If they see a bill that they don't like in Congress, that they are able to approach us and get all the information they need to go run that themselves, which of course they could do now, but might just not know that that's an option. And so I'd love to see more of, like a general engagement and a tool to do that. So things just like having an actively ongoing Slack. You mentioned NSPN earlier, and their Slack is extremely nice for just being able to talk and say like, hey, does anyone know about this particular program? And so having that same thing for Hopkins students.
So you mentioned two, two.
University level, on the national and beyond level, increasing collaborations and having kind of ongoing relationships with many different entities, whether that's other science policy groups. So we have a really good relationship, for example, with the Embassy of Japan right now. We've written a paper with them. We've done multiple events at their embassies, and we're very good friends with some of the main science policy officers. Actually, one of whom just finished up his gig and went back to Japan, which was very sad. But
you have the connection now, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Precisely. Yep. And so, by that same token, developing those relationships with embassies, with congressional offices, with other science policy groups, and with other universities internationally, I think to the point where you can draw on all of those as resources. You can plan events with those entities, and then when something comes up where plenty of things come up that are relevant to Japan's scientific advancement, to collaborations that might happen internationally, or something that comes up where we see right now there's specific universities whose science funding has been attacked, and being able to know the people there, reach out to them, see what kind of support systems are in place, for example. It's those kinds of ideas that just having those like ongoing relationships, I think would be valuable, not just for us, but for kind of everyone to have this crosstalk, and that starts with the graduate students communication channel that I was talking about earlier, with all the science policy groups talking, but having ongoing collaborations with events, both university-wide and internationally, with other universities internationally. And it would be incredibly valuable.
Okay. So on that same note, and I wish we could keep on talking, and we're going to have you back. Okay. And I want to come back out to it because we're doing this impression. As much as possible.
Wonderful.
you mentioned the word collaboration.
Mhm.
So as we close off here, for those who are watching, you have other group members in other universities that are probably thinking about starting their own thing, maybe, right? Others who may have already, and they're looking at your website saying, wow, there's some cool stuff you're doing here. How are you cranking out all these JSPG papers? You know, to give us your magic secret sauce and so forth. There may be scientists who have students in their labs, right, that sit in this. What are plug-in points for your group specifically? We would love for you to ground it here, think locally, right? Hopkins and maybe the DC metro area, right? Broadly. What are the plug-in points? How can they work with you, collaborate with you? Funders might be watching this later too. So frame your answer accordingly.
Okay, so grounding it here, first of all, the group is always very happy and open to collaborate and share resources. You know, we're not doing the science thing where, you know, our little research corner is our research corner and we need to be the first ones to find it. We want to expand this. So, you know, asking for things like, hey, how did you put those JSPG publications together? How do you do a Hill Day? How do you organize your writing workshops? Anything like that. It's like I'll send you every slide we've ever made.
So they can email you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. All right. So reaching out and emailing. Which,
what about events?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, by the same token, I think we're happy to share resources that help with events. In terms of like starting events and this goes for how we plan events, and I think how anyone can. Everything is a passion project. I think it's detrimental to have an agenda of we have to get this thing done, and this thing done. I think it's better if you have someone who's passionate about leading a workshop on writing, or we had a member who was really interested in negotiation, which takes, especially on a diplomacy side, is incredibly valuable skill to have that we don't learn. And so she took the initiative and actually reached out to other universities that have negotiating workshops and those resources to get that stuff. And so I think any event should come from like the individual level. You don't want to force anything and say we have to do this event, but rather we have this initiative that we really care about. We have this training that we think is extremely important for graduate students or postdocs or undergrads, whoever you're trying to serve, and build it out from there. And then, once you get interest, you can see what the people who come to those events are interested in and expand to other events that might be their passion projects, for example.
I see.
And so, like I said, by the same token, we've done negotiation workshops. When we do congressional Hill Day visits, all of those initiatives come off of what our individual members are interested in. And by the same token, when we ask for applications to join those, we say, hey, which initiative from the graduate students, from postdocs, which initiative are you interested in, and why are you interested in that initiative? Because we don't want you doing it for the resume item, kind of like I mentioned earlier. We want it to be for the passion of doing it because it's meaningful. And so in terms of planning events, having come from the passion, place of passion, and then logistically, at least our university, we have ways of booking rooms. We have directed ways of requesting funding from the internal graduate student organizations here, for example. And so finding those resources and then make a documented list of how to access those resources. That's one thing that we kind of learned the hard way of constantly relearning these things over and over, like how to apply for funding, to the point where we decentralized and said, hey, let's have a document so that someone can go to that and find out how to do that.
So those exist now?
Yes, exactly. Okay. For at least for Hopkins, for our group.
Yeah,
obviously
internally. Yeah. But for someone externally, if you're applying for it, maybe you'll share a little bit, not the entire thing.
Well, all right, we're happy to share the applications, but of course the application process will probably be different at UPenn, at Columbia, at Portugal.
Right.
And so some of these things are going to be naturally like Hopkins specific. But
my question though, is to make sure you're able to get in there.
Sure.
So, there may be trainers, because you mentioned earlier you do some trainings here as well.
Yeah.
So the plug-in points I'm thinking about are, you have your group.
Yep.
Here are things that are your priority right now. Let's say the next 6 to 12 months.
Sure. Okay.
Your priority is to do these kind of workshop, and we're looking for folk that have this expertise.
Sure. Okay.
Right. So
Sounds
those are
good.
kind
No,
of pointing towards something.
I got what you're saying.
Yeah.
So yeah. So if we're talking about events that we want to do soon, Congressional Hill Day visits are constantly kind of a thing we're thinking about.
Okay.
We can do those pretty annually. For that expertise in, going to Congress, talking to them. Fortunately, here at Hopkins, we have a federal policy office.
Okay.
And so we bring in, or we've gone to trainings with the people there who do the same thing, who like half their week is going down to DC to talk to congressional offices. And most universities have that. So as a general rule of thumb, but that's a great, easy internal expertise starting point. By the same token, staffers, people, science policy fellows, like through the AAAS fellowship or other science policy fellowships, are going to be great people who have expertise in generally just like working on the Hill, being involved. We also try to do a career panel semi-frequently, and at the same time, we also invite science policy fellows to kind of be the early career science policy professionals at those panels. And then,
so those interested maybe might want to reach out to you, maybe, right?
Yes,
If you join those panels.
Yeah, if you want to, if you want to kind of get your story out there, reaching out if you're in the science policy fellow position, or even just a staffer, whether if your portfolio covers any kind of science, like that's naturally relevant. Similarly, embassy officials, science policy officials are who we interact with for the embassy visits. And so embassies that want to get the that kind of exposure that comes from graduate students hearing about what that country and that embassy are doing, that's naturally where to go. Beyond that, other government officials, people working in science policy consulting spaces are also extremely helpful. Science policy is not just government workers, it's people at think tanks, it's people who are writing the papers and those practitioners. And so DC naturally has plenty of them, but that's where you can kind of expand and go nationally with it, where you're going to have some amount of people doing active science policy practicing, similar to what you do, of course. And so those are the kind of people we reach out for career panels, and by the same token, when we do trainings like writing workshops, those are the same kind of people we want to be talking to about who have experience writing in multiple stages. We've done lots of policy memos, but we also people who have experience writing op-eds, who are staff writers for periodicals, anything like that is extremely valuable for being able to gain those skills, like writing, like talking to government officials, anything like that, in terms of just planning events and being able to bring expertise to students.
And these policy memos, as I mentioned earlier, I can imagine on your website you guys should discuss putting up how many memos, for example, from members published. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And because I think that, I don't know if this is true, but the specialty maybe of that you guys are carving out for yourselves here to say, when you think about Hopkins and its science policy, the policy group, they're doing something there. Because look at all these wonderful ideas, policy memos that they have.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It is definitely, that's part of the learning, like communication process too, is advertising it, right? Getting it out there. So we definitely try to post little posts about the events we're doing, but I like the idea of kind of summarizing, here's the impact that you can have in a year to 5 years of having a group like this that's constantly working for this mission.
And you just started it today. You told us those anecdotes.
Exactly. This is the perfect medium for that.
And we didn't do it justice, I'll tell you, in terms of there's so much in there. And I think you guys are doing some really fantastic work that we need to continue talking and understand what you're learning, right, and so forth. So until next time, though, right?
I appreciate it. Yes, exactly.
Thanks so much.